Today on Media Moolah, the podcast where we dive into the future of media with a focus on monetization and growth, we'll be discussing sponsorship and newsletters. I'm very pleased to welcome Niklas Wenzel from Megahit. Hello Niklas, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thanks for joining. So Niklas, newsletter is a hot topic right now for publishers. It's very trendy. It's an exciting market to be in. But the question everyone is asking, of course, is once I have a newsletter, how do I make money out of my newsletter, out of my subscribers? And I believe you're one of the best person I found to introduce us to the best and most innovative ways to find sponsors for a newsletter. But before we get started into the topic, who is Niklas?
Yeah, I'm the founder of Megahit. Megahit is a data tool that helps publishers monetize their newsletters. So I've spent the last 2 years helping publishers with their monetization with their data. And I'm now also writing a newsletter called Audience Doctor, which is focused on exactly the same topic, helping publishers use their data to make more money.
How did you get into the media industry and the sponsorship, the newsletter? Were you a publisher before, or you're more like a tech guy? How did you get into it?
I'm more of a tech guy. So I started writing software when I was 10 and did it as a hobby for a while and tried publishing some software like from commercially on my own. And at some point while I was doing that, I met a guy on an online forum. It's CJ Gustafson. He writes mostly metrics, and at that time he had just started writing that newsletter. It's a B2B newsletter for CFOs, and it's grown pretty big, and he's pretty successful with it now. And yeah, he had just started at that time, and so I got to see him grow from 0 subscribers to where he is now, which was awesome. And at some point I just had an idea and was like, do you even have any clue who's subscribed to your newsletter? And he didn't really, so I helped him figure that out. And then he recommended what I had built for him to other people. And that's how I met more and more people in the media industry, first starting with smaller creators and now more like the mid-sized B2B media companies, I'd say.
You know, it's funny because when I discovered your SaaS, your solution, probably recommended from another newsletter, or I'm not really sure, maybe on LinkedIn. And when I checked your website, your landing page, I was like, that makes so much sense. How come I didn't think about it? And that's what I shared in my newsletters to my subscribers. I said, look, this solution makes so much sense. And yet no one I knew was talking about that. But before we get more into what you do with Megahit and how it can help newsletters owner to find new sponsors, could you run us down, could you establish like a list of the different ways for a guy or person who has a newsletter, how can he find sponsors for his newsletter? So we'll be talking mostly B2B newsletter, I guess.
Yeah, I work mostly with B2B media companies with B2B newsletters, so that's what I focus on. I think if I had to start selling ads today, I would try to make a list of companies I would want to reach. I think about which industry I'm in, which companies offer solutions for that industry, and try to reach out to them. And you can try to reach out and try to pitch to them directly. You can also just reach out and ask them, hey, I'm covering this industry. Do you just want to have a chat? And when you pitch someone, they might ignore it initially. When you talk to them and are like, hey, do you want to have a conversation? Then maybe they will bring up the fact that you might want to work together in some way. But just I have Jacob Donnelly in mind, who writes A Media Operator, a great publication for the media industry. And I admire about him how good he is at building relationships. He has connections to almost everyone in the industry, and he gets the biggest sponsors in the industry that you can get. And he just enjoys talking to people. And through that, he gets so many opportunities. And I think he mentioned recently that with less than 10,000 subscribers, he's on the way to make more than $1 million this year in revenue, which is awesome.
Just from sponsors, because he runs events as well, I guess.
Yeah, sponsorships are part of it. Events are part of it. Paid subscriptions are part of it. So he adds a lot of things together. If you're subscribed to his pro subscription, he publishes every year what his revenue breakdown is, which is really interesting. I forgot it right now, but you can look it up.
Okay, cool. So the first tip would be to just make a list of advertisers who are related to your industry to just outreach to them.
I think that's one of the things I would start, and one of the most intuitive things. Another thing that works really well is looking at who is running ads. That can be in your newsletter. I mean, it can be in competitors' newsletters. It can be ads on social media that people are running, ads in magazines that people are running. Just look at who's willing at the moment to spend ad dollars, and then find the person who's making those decisions, those budget decisions, and try to get in touch with them and say, hey, you're advertising with them. We have a similar audience. Do you want to collaborate in some way? And you can check that manually, or there are some solutions that help you with doing that. Who Sponsors Stuff is a big one. They're great guys, and they can help you find those cases and those people that you can reach out to.
All right. Who Sponsors Stuff is like a database of advertisers sponsoring only newsletters, or they're covering other verticals?
I believe it's currently newsletters. So last time I checked, it was newsletters. They might have, I think there's some tools that give you other verticals too, like websites and stuff. I'm mostly in the newsletter industry, so that's where I know the most at the moment. Should we continue with other ways?
Yeah, please.
All right, sure. One thing that can also be really helpful is going to in-person events. So for example, someone is doing a conference or some kind of networking events in your industry. All the people who want to reach that industry are going to show up.
Right.
So you can just go strike up a conversation over dinner. You can just walk up to random people, talk to them, tell them what you do, maybe set a meeting afterwards, or if in advance you know who's going to attend, you can even send emails before and ask them, hey, do you have a few minutes during that day? I would love to get to know you better and what you do, and maybe there's some way we can collaborate. And just being in the same room with people is so powerful. This is not from a publisher perspective, but I went to the AMO summit last year, and I just had the ability to walk up to the CEOs of the biggest media companies there are and ask them questions. And that's something, these people, you don't reach them easily by sending them an email, but you can reach them very easily if you go to an event where they are also there. It costs them nothing to listen to you for a minute. So that's something I highly recommend doing.
Yeah, and it can be, I guess, for a B2B newsletter, it can be really profitable because okay, you're going to pay for the event, for the ticket to get there, etc. But once you establish relationship in-person event, as you say, it feels different. It clicks differently as well. And people remember, and they cannot really ignore your call or your email because you're in front of them. So, you're like, hey. So yeah, that's a great tip, actually. We are all a digital media person, and sometimes we tend to forget that the good old ways, like meeting people in real life, is working really well. So yeah, that's a great tip.
Yeah, and then if you go to a conference, you also get inspiration for your content.
Sure.
And how to improve your business, what to cover. Let's say it costs you $2,000 or euros to go to a conference, but you land a partnership with a company that pays you 10K or something, and then you get good content. It's a pretty good deal.
For sure.
There's some other things that you can try. There's some agencies that can help you sell ads. So there's some agencies that will basically do all the things for you that I mentioned. One that I know is Ad Sales as a Service by Dan Barry.
Right.
He's a London guy. He does a good job at that. And then there are also some ad networks that people use where they basically make deals with marketing agencies on behalf of 20 newsletters at a time. And then they get an ad from a big brand and place it across many newsletters. The disadvantage from the latter is the agency that sells ads for you wants a cut. So you get lower revenue in the end, but you don't have to do anything to bring those ads in. And some people also use it to backfill issues or articles where they don't have their own sponsor, and then they bring in something through an agency or marketplace or something like that.
So just to be clear, the difference between the first guy you mentioned, the guy in London, ad sales as a service and a network, the ad sales as a service is like a hired contractor that will promote your newsletter to specific advertisers.
Yeah, so it's basically hiring a salesperson, but the agency manages the salesperson for you, and they do outreach to advertisers. They take the calls with them, and I mean, you can take the calls or they can take the calls. That's your choice. But it's basically, instead of hiring a salesperson, you hire an agency that does that for you. Yes, hiring a salesperson, an individual salesperson, is also something that you can consider doing. And then a marketplace or something like that is more, they get big names in. Think something like HubSpot, which is really big, and then they place those ads in 20 or 100 newsletters at a time.
Understood.
Yeah, and then I would say one thing that's really powerful is getting advertisers who are subscribed to your newsletter. You can do that in two ways. One is the easiest thing and something you can start with, which is put a section into your newsletter or onto your website that says, like this content, want to get in front of my audience, reach out and sponsor us. That is like a good first step. But what's really powerful is if you have a way to reach out to your subscribers and to like pitch them individually, look at what they're doing, tell them how you would be a good fit to them. They are convinced that your content is great because they are fan. So it's like whenever you sell to a reader, it's so much easier than to a random person. So like if you have a way to find who is subscribed and might be a potential advertiser and then reaching out to them one-on-one, that's a really strong way to get advertisers for your newsletter, for your publication.
I understand the logic behind like want to sponsor this newsletter, but I always feel like it can backfire as well, because like, you know, like in the real life, when you pass by a billboard in your city and you see the billboard is like want to advertise here, you think like, oh, that's a bad billboard because no one is buying this space, you know. Basically it's always in the back of my mind. So don't you get the same idea online? It makes sense, I think it works, but at the same time I'm putting myself in the shoes of an advertiser who want to sponsor this news. The first reaction might be, well, actually, this news is like begging for sponsor. So I almost feel like you should put like a fake sponsor, you know, just to attract more advertisers. Did you have this discussion before with other like B2B publication? What's their feeling about it? Or is it really working and I'm just creating a problem where there's no problem?
I think it does work. I think that you have a point that you don't want to overdo it. So if you have no advertisers and like every week put a message in, it might be a bit too much. You have a bunch of advertisers and then every third week or something, you put it in. I think it works. I've seen it, for example, TLDR is a big media company in the newsletter space, and they have a lot of ads, but when they don't have one, they put it in. Okay. And I don't know their numbers, but it's run by a very smart guy, and I would be surprised if he didn't have logic behind it and if it wasn't working.
All right, makes sense. Good point. Okay, so there's another way to find sponsor among your subscriber, and that's a topic that you know really well. Why you created Megahit. So perfect transition. Do you want to tell us a bit more about Megahit and what it is, what it does, and the advantage for publisher who are using it?
Yeah. That sounds great. So Megahit is a software that gets you data on your subscribers. Based on their email address, it finds out what they do for work. So what's their names, what their job titles, what are their companies, what are their LinkedIn profiles, these kind of things. And then publishers use it in a bunch of different ways to make money. A very immediate one is find good sponsors among your subscribers. Then once you're talking to these sponsors, they will want to know who your audience is. So you need some kind of way of telling them. Megahit then gives you statistics showing you who your audience is. You might be able to segment your list in some ways to send more targeted ads. And yeah, it's like a ton of other things you can do, but it's a very powerful data tool to help you with your monetization.
So basically you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you scrape the subscriber base of a newsletters and you enrich it with data that can help the newsletter to make better decision in terms of who to contact and who is in my list, basically.
Yeah, so you start, you're connected to your ESP, your newsletter platform. It synchronizes your subscriber list, and then it enriches that list with additional data to do all these things you mentioned.
Cool. Can you give us an idea of a live demo of the tools to get a better idea of what do you do with Megahit?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me share my screen. Here we go. So yeah, this is Megahit. As I said, you're connected to your newsletter platform. It synchronizes your subscriber list, and it helps you get additional data on these subscribers. So based on the email address, it finds their names, it finds their LinkedIn profiles, their titles, their companies, what these companies do, links for the company, how large the company is, because you don't want to sell to like one person freelancer shop. They usually don't have the money to advertise with you. And depending on your newsletter platform, a bunch of metrics on how active the subscriber is. And then people use it to find advertisers. That's one of the immediate use cases. And for that, Megahit gives you filters to filter your long list down to marketers and founders and CEOs, which are usually the people you talk to when you sell sponsorships. And then publishers go through this list, the shorter list, find someone who's a good fit, mark them as, hey, this is someone I should reach out to, and then later send them an email or send them a message on LinkedIn and reach out to them.
So it almost acts as well as a CRM where you can like label the contact, the lead that you have, and you follow the leads within Megahit.
Yeah, it is like a mini CRM. It doesn't. Some people still use a CRM afterwards, like they tag people in Megahit and then they filter down to, let's say, all the people that you would want to reach out to. And then they pull that out into a separate tool and do the outreach there.
Okay.
So it is like a mini CRM. It doesn't, at least as of now, it's not a full-blown CRM.
And I can see that there's a lot of like email with Yahoo or Gmail domain. So it doesn't have to be corporate address email to work.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Like there's always going to be a percentage that you find data on and a percentage that you're not going to find data on. And if someone has a corporate email, it works better because it's easier. It has the company in it. It often has the name in it. But it also works for Gmails, for Hotmails, and personal email addresses.
So the main case you mentioned for someone to use Megahit will be to contact potential advertisers. And you think like, oh, I have like a B2B newsletter about like the CFO. And you see an interesting guy working for a company and you think it would be a good fit. How do you, basically you got, as a user of Megahit, you got access to all the data you're showing on screen. What's the next step? How do I use this to strike new deals?
Yeah, so usually people filter down to marketers and founders, find someone who's interesting, and then you want to reach out to them. And that always depends on a bunch of factors. You can reach out through email, you can reach out through LinkedIn. And it also depends on how they signed up. So let's say we have someone here who signs up with their company email. And by the way, all the data I'm showing is demo data. I would not show real people here. So This is all made up data, just to be clear. But let's say...
I was about to ask you if I need to blur the...
No, you don't need to.
The data.
This is all made up. And even if you use Megahit, I never get to see your data. So the data stays with you. It's built in a way so that you don't have to worry as much about sharing your data with anyone.
Okay.
And yeah, let's say someone signs up with a corporate email address. In that case, you can often like reach out to them and say, hey, I was going through my subscriber list. I saw you on there. I realized you're, let's say, chief marketing officer. Do you want to chat and have a conversation about how we can help? And the person who receives that message is going to recognize your brand and they're like, yeah, I read that every day. And then hopefully they will take that meeting. Now, sometimes people sign up with Gmail addresses, or like that happens quite a bit on newsletters. And then you might not want to go to them and tell them, hey, like I stalked you on the internet basically, but you might want to take a more subtle approach. You might want to just send them like a cold email that where you don't reveal that you know that they're a subscriber, and just send them a message and say, hey, this is what we do as a company. I realize you're doing this. This is how we could work together. Do you want to have a chat? And the other person is still going to recognize who you are, is still going to recognize the brand and going to say to themselves, hey, I'm a fan. I want to take this call. And then you can do that on LinkedIn, or you can do that with their corporate email address.
So by chatting with all the people, the clients that are using Megahit, what's the main benefit that they like the most? Is that, or what's the thing that that you hear the most as a feedback? Is it, oh, it's so much easier to sell sponsorship to a guy who opens my newsletter every day, or what's the main benefit?
To be honest, it varies a bit from newsletter to newsletter what they want. Something I hear very often is like it's like opening Pokemon cards, like seeing who like is actually reading, because oftentimes people have no idea. But that's more like an emotional thing. In terms of benefit, it's finding sponsors, a big one. Another big one is getting statistics on your audience, because once you have all of that data in, you can get like in Megahit breakdowns by which country are those people from, which job function do they have? Do you have a lot of founders, marketers, engineers, and so on? Are those entry-level people? Are those executives? How big are the companies that these people are from? Which industries are they in? And so you get like data that you can use to paint a picture to your sponsors of who your readers are. And let's say you want to sell to a B2B sponsor. They have the option of going to Google and saying, I want to reach CMOs, or like Facebook or like LinkedIn, and say, I want to reach CMOs at companies of this size. And that's kind of like who you're competing with. And so it's very important that you can go to them and say, yeah, if you advertise with us, you're also going to reach this demographic that you want to reach. And I think it's also important because there are a lot of media companies who like pretend to have good audiences, but don't actually have good audiences. And then being able to show the raw data of they actually have them is really, really powerful. And it changes the conversation that you have with the potential sponsor.
You can see how it can apply effectively to make better media kit to improve your outreach. And as well, I'm thinking, I didn't think about it when we prepared the podcast, but it could be really powerful as well to just give you, as you perfectly explained, like it gives you a better idea of who you're talking to. So potentially it gives you a better way to manage your editorial efforts and editorial strategy. And by seeing that, for example, you talk to a lot of people in cybersecurity and you thought that your audience was mainly tech, you could think like, oh, maybe I should like provide more content around the first topic rather than latter. So it's really cool. I think it applies to many things, from revenue generation, of course, that's the main thing that you offer, but as well like in the back end, like how do I better respond to my real audience? How do I better understand who are they and what potentially they need? So yeah, that's really cool.
I think that's something you want to understand when you're making content, like who are you talking to? And people have also found other ways to make their content better with it. And a big one is finding sources. So let's say you want to write about a certain topic and you need someone to interview or you need some background on it. People then jump in here and look for people who could help them out, either to come on to a podcast and they invite them. And it's pretty easy to invite your own fans to a podcast. Versus someone random. And also to like, let's say you're writing a story about how the shipping industry is changing right now, and you find some CEOs or finance people from like the top companies in the industry on your list, and you reach out to 20 of them and 5 of them reply to you. That gives you a story. And I mean, in the end, content is what brings you revenue. So in the end, it links back to revenue as well.
A third question. Right now, like there are like newsletter platforms such as Substack or Beehive that are really like surfing on the wave of like the creator economy and B2B newsletters. A lot of publishers are using this platform to create a newsletter from scratch and to manage the whole thing. Do they provide such capacity as well? When I sign up with Beehive or Substack, do they have this type of functionalities?
So far, I'm not aware of any newsletter platform that offers it. Like Megahit integrates with 9 different ones at the time, such as Beehive, Kit, Substack, and so on. And as of now, I don't think any of them have it. And I'm also not sure if it's such a good feature for them. because it only really works if you have a B2B publication.
Right.
Like if you try this and have a consumer publication, from my experience, the people I've worked with, it doesn't really give you good results, because in consumer, you want to know something completely different. If you write a publication about model trains or something, you want to know whether they buy that stuff and how much income they have. And that's what the sponsor wants to know, and not are they a CFO.
Sure.
And so I'm not sure if it even makes that much sense for most of them to add. And so Megahit integrates with all these platforms to help publishers on them.
Makes sense. So you talk about the features of Megahit for today. What's your plan for tomorrow? You're a tech guy. You must have like 100 ideas to improve or to add to Megahit. Can you give us a bit of insights about what's coming?
Yeah, the next big thing is better segmentation. To be able to drill down even better to certain segments of your list, whether that is a sponsor comes in and says, I want to have my message in front of all of the CFOs at tech companies, and then Megahit lets you like create a segment for that automatically, or whether it's or like a different use case where segmentation is really powerful at the moment is people host events for their like fans, and let's say they host an event in New York, and then they go in here and use the location filter in Megahit to find all the people who live in New York. And then they reach out to them and invite them to their dinner. And then a sponsor comes in and pays, I don't know, $5,000 to sponsor that dinner, which is like not a lot of work for the media company, but like good money for it. So like any way you can like segment your list down further is really, really valuable for your monetization. And so that's going to be a focus for the next, let's say 2 or 3 months.
Okay, makes sense. There's obviously a lot of efforts from B2B publication to really use the data that they have, and some B2B media are really proficient at it, or really efficient to first get the data and then to use the data to make your part of this ecosystem. So once you as a B2B media, as a B2B publisher, once you have the data, how do you segment your list? As if you could share like a few best practices to segment your list to make sure that you have a healthy list and well segmented list that then will provide you with the capacities to exploit this data to make more money out of your subscribers?
Yeah, first of all, the thing you mentioned was a lot of publishers already have good plans for what they do with the data. I have one anecdote from when I went to the AMO Summit, asked one CEO, hey, what are you doing with the data? And his first response was, like, lots of people are going to tell you they use data in an amazing way in their company, but once you actually look under the hood, most of them are just trying to figure out what to do best. So
Okay.
that was his summary, and I think it's true. Like some people have it really figured out, some of the really big ones, but a lot of people are still trying to figure out what to do.
You're talking B2B still?
Yeah, still B2B.
Okay. Okay.
I think there's still a lot of potential in using data, and there's a lot of education you have to do around it, which is also why I started Audience Doctor as a newsletter to help people do that. And then for your questions of how to segment your list, I think it often depends on what goal you're trying to achieve. So if your goal is to find sponsors among your readers, you want to find by their job titles who are marketers, who are founders, who are CEOs. If you want to host a dinner somewhere and need attendees, you want to segment by location. If a sponsor comes in and says, I want to reach a certain industry, you need a segment that gets you that. So it's hard to give like a one size fits all answer. It all depends on what are you trying to achieve right now.
Okay. And actually circling back and coming back, how do you get this data? Because most of the time when I sign up for a newsletter, they will ask my email. That's it. Of course, like on more professional, some B2B publishers are asking like your job title, the size of your company, sometimes the revenue of your company. It's really more like segmented from the get go. But how do you get this data without prior to using Megahit? How do publishers are using or getting this data?
Yeah, I think a very important one is having people self-report their data. As you said, some people require it during sign up so that you can only sign up once you give your work email, your title, your name, your company, your industry, maybe your revenue, which means you get fewer subscribers, but it also means you can monetize them a lot better. If you have 100,000 subscribers and don't know who they are, versus you have 10,000 subscribers and you know exactly that like 100 of them are CEOs at $100 million plus revenue companies, you might make more money from the smaller audience than the bigger ones. So sometimes it's not about growth, it's about having the quality audience behind it. So like having people self-report when they sign up is usually the best time to do it. You can do it as required for the sign up, or you can do it after the sign up, where then after the sign up, they're like, thanks for subscribing. Can you tell us a bit more about yourself? And I was talking to a guy who online goes by the name of Marketing Max. He has a marketing newsletter and he has a pretty good sign up form afterwards. And he said he gets 70% of people to fill it out, which is pretty amazing. And if you have data on 70% of your audience, you're pretty good. You're pretty good. Now you might already have a list and have not done that in the past. In that case, you can still send out surveys to your readers and ask them, hey, can you tell us who you are? It works not as well when you do it afterwards, but it's something you can try. You can also try sending them emails like, hey, complete your profile so that we can send you better content. And some people even do it in like a way where you just have to click a link. So you might receive an email, hey, can you give us your job title? And they know that the people who subscribe to their newsletters are usually CFOs, heads of finance, analysts, or something like that. And then they just have a list of like 5 options and you just have to click the right link. And then 2 weeks later, you might get an email, can you tell us which industry you are in? And then you might have a selection again. And like over time, you fill it out. Or something, let's say a sponsor comes to you and they want to know how many readers do you have in a certain industry, in a certain function. You might put that as a survey into your newsletter. Hey, what's your industry, your function or something, and then you get the percentage, and like the next week can report back to the sponsor, this is how many people you have who match your description. And then you can choose Megahit, for example, to like go from the email to like the data on top of it. You can also do that manually. You can filter out all the Gmails and all the Yahoos and all the Hotmails and look at the people where you have the company. Then Google them or look them, see if you can find the name on LinkedIn or something like that, which like sucks to do if you have 20,000, 30,000 subscribers. But if you have 500 or like 1,000, you might take an evening to just go through them.
Right. And once you have all the data, how can it be used? Because you mentioned already that you could, for example, invite people for an event, but I'm sure you've seen your fair share of like innovative ways or good ways to use the data to monetize behind the advertising, I guess, or to use it to grow your media company. So can you give us details about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I still think reaching out to sponsors is a big one. One CEO that I work with reached out to fellow CEOs and he got responses had meetings booked from 70% of them. It's like an insane number if you send emails. So that's powerful. Your media kit is very powerful. Might even be the most powerful thing of it all, even though publishers don't always see it like that. Leads are something that has more of an allure. Events, finding people for events is great. Segmenting your list for sponsors if they want to reach a certain subset of them is great. You can find sources. You can find, if you sell some kind of product, let's say you develop a course or you develop consulting on the side to finance your media company, you can find good clients on your list to reach out for that. Finding people to interview is a great one. To understand your audience is great and make better content for them. Maybe you figure out that there's a certain segment of your list that's a bit underserved because you haven't written content for them. And then you make like a second publication that serves their needs. So that's something else that you can do there.
And you mentioned that you just launched a newsletter. I'll put the the link in the description of this podcast. Can you tell us a bit more about the logic behind it? Is it because you want to get your hands dirty and say like, okay, I'm helping the B2B newsletter, so I need my newsletter as well as a lab, as a laboratory to just experiment things and see how it works in real life? Or is that because you really want to share your unique perspective on the topics? And what topics do you cover actually within Audience Doctor?
Yeah, so sure. So it's called Audience Doctor, audiencedoctor.com. It's about how you as a B2B publisher can use your data to increase your revenue. And I'll cover all the ways in like detail that you can use your data to monetize. And why did I start it? It was partially because once people sign up for Megahit and they do their outreach to sponsors and they fill their media kit, they come to me and ask, what else can I do? This has been great. I want to do more with it. And they want inspiration. And I thought I could write it just for my customers. And I do. And I jump on calls with them and help them. But also it's helpful for anyone out there. And then, of course, some of them might sign up for my service in the end. And of course, it's if I deal with publishers and work with them, it's great to have been a publisher. And even if it's like on a smaller scale, right, to know what it's like.
Okay, cool. And what do you... If we zoom back a bit, and in terms of, I always like to ask my guests what the opportunities are within the subject the topic of the day. What are the opportunities for B2B publishers from your point of view? Because you talk to a lot of B2B newsletters, a lot of media operators. You go to industry events. So can you give us like the big opportunities that you see in the next few months or the next few years?
I think, let's say you start with a website or you start with a newsletter, expanding to other mediums can work really well. Like you, for example, you started a podcast, which is a way to expand your audience, to give more content to your existing audience, also to people who don't like reading, but instead like listening. Events is a big one. I've seen the last AMO summit, like all the media companies on stage said that events are working so well for them, have been working really well after COVID ended and are still working really well because we have so much online content and we spend so much time working remote and people just really like it being in person, talking to each other, and it gives a different sense of trust than if you just are on a Zoom call, for example, or if you just send an email. So, and it's great to monetize. Like you host an event, it can be a smaller one, it can be a dinner where you just get 20 people from your industry together with a sponsor and you charge the sponsor 5K to attend. Or it can be a conference that's a day where people buy tickets and then you get sponsors on top. Or it can be something in between, or it can be a meetup or anything like that. But it's a great way to monetize your audience.
It's perfect to have a newsletter to promote your event, as you rightly said, because like there's this one-on-one kind of relationship online that then translate into the offline, and then after the conference or after the event, you can send like feedback about the event. You can feed your content as well, so I can see the potential for events. And I think as you said, like professionals are getting a bit like tired of all the information overload online, and they want to feel the real connection, especially in business. And to be fair, like you can spend your days looking at information online, but most of the time the real best information will probably be shared in kind of private settings or events. So I think that's the way to go. But we cannot mention events without mentioning logistics. And I've heard as well from media operators who used to run events that it can quickly become a really organizational nightmare if you're not prepared for it. And I had a chat with Simon Owens that runs a newsletter as well on the podcast. And his best advice was to not go too crazy when you start with event. Just start small, as you said, like a private dinner in a private setting, nothing fancy, and you just invite people. They have a nice time. They talk about the business, the industry, instead of like thinking, oh, I need to have like 100 booths and thousands guests. And I think that's makes sense when we explain it like this. But I see a lot of media company going completely crazy with events as the get go, and then a few years later they say, oh, we stop events. Where of course, because it's a completely different business model as well. So you need to adapt, you need to learn, and you need to organize physical event. That's a big difference between publishing online content and doing real life events. And really interesting for smaller publisher, I think, to get into events.
Yeah, I saw Matt McGarry, for example, do it, who's big in the newsletter space. He runs Newsletter Operator, a big newsletter on how to run newsletters. And he, in February, had a conference, which was pretty big and had great guests there. But before that, he started running smaller events. So he said the logistics are a bit too much for him to handle alone because he also runs an agency. So he hired someone to take care of the events for him. And he first started with a small, just meet at a bar, 20 people, private event kind of thing, a day before a conference. I was there, it was great, like everyone loved it. And then he did a couple more of those and got to learn what works great at an event, what doesn't work so great at an event. And then after that, he put on a conference and people had seen he can do good events. He had learned how to do it. And I bet he made a bunch of money from it.
Is that the newsletter conference that we see all over LinkedIn these days? Was it like recently?
It's not that one. The newsletter conference that was just happened at the beginning of May was run by the guys from Who Sponsor Stuff, Ryan and Jesse and Dan Oshinsky. And Matt McGarry ran a separate one.
Okay.
I think it was called the Newsletter Marketing Summit in February.
Okay. Yeah. There's such events, but none of the events are in France right now for B2B newsletters.
Maybe a chance for you?
Why not? My audience is more broad than newsletters, but newsletters get a lot of attention actually. So yeah, I think there's something to do around like a private events, as you said. Start small, understand your audience, and then provide more and bigger events if necessary.
So anyone who's listening, send him an email afterwards if you would attend.
Perfect. That's a way to do it. What do you see the industries monetizing well actually in the space of B2B? Because you could talk about cybersecurity, you could talk about media, you could talk about finance, you could talk about whatever you want. What are the industry that, from what you see, are monetizing particularly well?
To be honest, I think all of them are monetizing well. I think the big difference is audience quality. I think that's what sets media companies apart, because let's say someone wants to advertise with you. They have a certain person in mind that they want to reach. And then the question is, do you have them? Like they might place one ad with you and you might bring those people or you might not bring those people. If you bring them, they will continue placing ads. If you don't bring them, they will stop. So I think what really matters is like, is your audience like the valuable people in the industry? Is it the people who can make decisions? And if you have a lot of them and you get them funneled in some way to your sponsors, you will make a bunch of money. And then where does a good audience come from? In the end, it comes from the content. Because let's imagine you're a CEO of, let's say, a shipping company and you have it's a shipping publication. Your time is very limited as a CEO. So you will only read the stuff that's actually like really, really good. And that's the stuff you will really enjoy reading and be a fan of. And then you might click on the ads and interact with the advertisers. If it's something that's like mediocre content, you will not interact with it. Like you will have higher value things to do with your time. And so I think the first step to having a great audience is the content. Then of course, collecting data on it but like good content, building good relationships with them. And then you have a great audience and that's something you can monetize. And when you have that, I think like all the B2B publishers that I know who have a great audience are doing well, even if they're not great salespeople, they just deliver great results. And so people will continue working with them. Right. And like the ones who struggle often went and tried to buy subscribers for like 20 cents on Twitter. And then and then they didn't care about which country those subscribers are from, for example. And there's not people who have the purchasing power to actually interact with the advertisers in a meaningful way. So I think audience quality is the one thing. And as long as you do, and you have a niche that you're passionate about, you will find a way to monetize it.
Makes a lot of sense. I'm curious, did you ever use newsletter sponsorship to promote Megahit?
I have worked with a bunch of creators, both for this product and previous products. So I have, and my experience was that certain publications give you exceptional results, like truly awesome, and certain get you nothing at all. And then oftentimes it means the audience is just not a good fit. So for example, with Megahit, I'm not targeting publishers who just started. So a newsletter for publishers that are just starting and have the basic questions, they're not going to be able to afford my product. So I'm not going to see results there. And then with others that have like a better audience, I'm going to see good results from it. And then also some people just lie about who their audience is. That's an unfortunate thing that happens. So it's sometimes hard to know in advance how it's going to turn out. But like, yeah, the difference is like night and day between what you can get from publications.
What would be your best advice if you want to start to use a newsletter as a sponsor, to maybe do some research beforehand and maybe like checking what's on the media kit? How do you you mentioned that some are like lying or not showing the truth about the how do you get the truth? How do you know what's the audience, really, who are the audience?
I think the best advice, like there are a couple of things. I would look at their media kits, and if their media kit says it's not the people you're targeting, drop them. People are not always honest in their media kit. Like I would say at least like a third of newsletter publishers lie in their media kit about who their audience is, maybe more. And then one thing I would do is look at the content. Is the content actually good? Or is it like top tier content, or is it like mediocre content? If it's top tier content, there's a really good chance that the audience is also a good one. If it's mediocre content, you can be pretty sure that the audience is not going to be good. And you could like from reading a newsletter, you see if it was written by someone who knows what's going on, or if it was all copy pasted from ChatGPT, maybe rewritten in some way. So yeah, looking at the content. That also oftentimes you'll talk to the person. Now some people are really good salespeople and they can sell you anything, but you also get a feeling for, are they shady, are they trustworthy? Maybe you have some other people, some at other companies that you know who might have tried running ads with certain newsletters. You can talk to them, figure out if they have seen results. So, and then, yeah, just run one ad, see what the result is, or maybe run 3 ads, if depends on how much budget you have. Sometimes one ad doesn't give you the full picture. Yeah, then see if you get any results, and then invest more if you do.
Makes a lot of sense. Niklas, thank you so much. I think we covered the topic. Before going to the closing question, do you have anything to add around Megahit or around the B2B space for newsletter operators?
I think we've covered everything that is important. Check out audience.com. Sign up. It's a newsletter every 14 days that tells you how to use your audience data to grow your revenue. I think you'll like it, and maybe check out Megahit too.
Yeah, perfect. I'll put the link in the description. I'm not signed up yet for your newsletter because I think it's really new, and you launched it.
It is new. Yes.
You just published the first issue.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. So that's why maybe I didn't receive, or I didn't check actually, but I'll make sure to register.
Thanks, Dan.
Do you have 5 minutes for the closing questions?
Sure.
Cool. So, you are a tech guy, you have a tool to help B2B newsletters, but what's the tool that you wish you had for your work that doesn't exist yet? If you had like a magic button you can push and you say, oh, that's the tool
Oh, that's a good question. I think the magic tool at some point will be if AI is so good that it can do all of that. To be honest, I don't think most of the things that I'm struggling with at the moment can be solved by tools. I think a lot of it still requires human work. So I wouldn't want to call a human a tool if I bring them in.
Yeah, they would not appreciate that. But do you, apart from Megahit, do you have like other ideas or other things that you're creating because you seem really passionate about coding and tech? You started at 10, I think you mentioned. So
yeah,
I'm sure
really.
You created a lot of things during your professional life and even like as a teenager and as a kid. So what are there any tools that maybe you have like for project, for other developments?
I did a bunch of interesting stuff before that. So before I built Megahit, I built a software for hip hop music producers.
Okay.
To easily create videos for the beats that they want to sell and publish them on YouTube. So that's what I did before that. I learned that you have to find a target audience who can actually pay money for your products, which was mostly students. They didn't really have money. And in terms of tech, I do help out on the Electron project, which is more like a technical thing, which is the base for a lot of software tools like Microsoft Teams, Visual Studio Code, a lot of the big teams. And I do a lot of technical work there, just as a hobby to like relax a bit. And I mostly develop alone at the moment, so working with a couple of other developers is fun. is fun too. But that's more of a side project.
If you take your publisher hat as audiencedoctor.com, what are the trends in the media industry that are the most exciting to you right now?
Well, of course, data. Publishers are waking up to that being important. I do like the events trend. I just see how successful people are with it. And I think if you're not doing it, you're missing out.
And what are the things that worry you the most, that raise the most question around the media industry?
I think it's how AI will change the media industry. Will people read the content made by humans? Will they just read summaries of it? I think it would be very sad if people just use AI to summarize everything. I think there's a lot of depth in content that you would miss that way, and a lot of quality that would be just like flattened out. I think there's something really valuable hearing it from the people who have a lot of experience in the field and go really deep in it and spend all of their time on it that you don't get from an AI. An AI in the end gives you, at least at this time, gives you average results on a lot of things, not like exceptional results. And I think the media companies that win do it by being really great at something.
But surely all the B2B newsletter you talk to, they're all using AI to, at some point, create or refine or source the content. What's the talk behind the scene? How do you know any newsletter that are like fully AI and that are working well? Or is that like the pre-thing before the human touch? What's the deal with AI for B2B newsletters?
I have seen newsletters who try to do it all with AI. I think right now they're not good. I think where people see more success with it is doing some kind of research, but then of course you should check the sources because the AI comes up with bullshit, and using it to maybe improve your wording. For example, for the first post on Audience Doctor, I took certain sentences where I wasn't sure if they were so great and put them into ChatGPT and got an alternative wording, which was simpler and easier to understand. That's something that works. Then some use it. I mean, in software development, AI is absolutely awesome. It made me pretty much twice as fast overnight. And so any publisher that has a website and needs some work on it is hopefully using AI in some form to do it. And I think using AI is great. I'm just afraid that it will be like the main way of interacting with the content at some point. And I think that will be sad. And it also kills a lot of user acquisition channels for publishers. Like search tanked so much. So I think there are great parts about it and there are not so great parts about it.
Which media or media group inspires you the most?
I think I'm the biggest fan of a media operator from Jacob Donnelly. It's great. You can get a bunch of stuff for free. You can pay for a bunch of stuff. It's very worth it to pay for it. I enjoy it a lot.
It's a great publication for us in the media industry. And that's one I read, of course, and with Simon Owens that I mentioned. I'm always
He's great too.
Yeah, it's great at finding the small info and then putting a perspective around it. And you think like, oh yeah, it makes so much sense. And I always feel a bit sorry because on LinkedIn, sometimes, in the media industry, there's a lot of talk and noise and people are sharing things and they get like 100 likes and it's just random. But then Simon will share something that is so on point, but it's so short and he will get like maybe 5 likes. And I'm like, how is it possible? This information is so valuable. So that's why I like to listen to his podcast as well and his newsletters and follow him on LinkedIn. I'll put the link because he's a great guy with a media operator. You got like everything you need basically to run a media company and to stay relevant. They are really great inspiration for Media Moolah as well. So we share this interest for this publication for sure. Cool.
Can I shout out some others that I think are great?
Of course, yeah. Please feel free.
Matt McGarry, I think, is great, who I mentioned earlier. He runs a newsletter operator. Mm-hmm. He's like really good. Dan Barry does a great job. He writes revenues, like revenue and news in one word. Mm-hmm. It's all about how to sell ads as a newsletter company, which is like really helpful. And Dan Oshinsky does a lot of great things too.
Dan is in the media space as well?
Is also in the media space, and it's called Inbox Collective. Okay. I think he's more on the consumer side of it than on the B2B side of it, but he has great content on how to, and very technical and content oriented, not so much sales, more on the content side. This is really good.
Perfect. What's the best way for listeners to get in touch with you, like on Megahit or LinkedIn? What's your favorite way?
I think you can subscribe to the Audience Doctor newsletter. LinkedIn is great. Niklas Wenzel. I think you might be able to post the link below. If you're interested in Megahit, there's a demo form on the website. I think those are the best ways to find me.
Thank you so much, Niklas, and I'll be following your journey for Megahit and as an audience doctor. And I learned a lot, and I know that B2B newsletter is a hot topic. So I appreciate your time and your expertise on this subject. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. It was a pleasure.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.